I went to my parents' party in a navy dress, spoke one truth, and got hit in front of everyone. My cousin laughed. She's doomed. Stay. Watch what I do with that sentence. Because at 5:41 p.m. on a Saturday in Riverton, Ohio, while blood mixed with gravel dust on my cheek and 37 relatives stood watching, I decided to dismantle everything they'd built, not with fists or screams, but with paperwork, public records, administrative violations, the kind of revenge that arrives in government envelopes and ends with padlocked doors. My name is Elise Rowan, and I arrived at Witt's Orchard and Event Barn carrying my grandmother's apple turnovers in a glass dish that still smelled like cinnamon and regret. The invitation had been precise in its cruelty, family only, printed in bold copperplate Gothic, addressed to Ms. E. Rowan, like I was a stranger they'd hired to cater. 12 years of marriage between my mother Diane and Rick Whitaker, and I remained perpetually outside their circle, watching through fogged glass. The barn sprawled across 3 acres of Riverton, Ohio farmland, its weathered wood facade hiding the $10,000 sound system Rick had installed last spring. I knew because I'd seen the permits during a routine compliance check at work. Larkspur Therapeutics trained us to spot documentation gaps everywhere, even in our stepfather's tax-dodging ventures. The parking area overflowed with pickup trucks bearing Whitaker Orchard's decals, each one representing a cousin or uncle who'd gotten their slice of the family business while I got form letters. Inside, the transformation hit immediately. Navy and gold streamers twisted from the rafters Diane's favorite colors since she'd married into money. Round tables dressed in cream linens held centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath, each arrangement worth more than the child support my biological father never lived to pay. The Whitakers had gathered in force, 43 people wearing matching navy polos with Whitaker Family Reunion 2024 embroidered in gold thread across the breast pocket. No one offered me a shirt. Oh, good, you're here. Diane materialized at my elbow, her voice pitched at that frequency of false brightness she'd perfected since remarrying. Her fingers, adorned with the 3-carat anniversary ring Rick had presented last year, plucked the turnovers from my hands. These can go on the dessert table. Rick's mother made her famous bourbon pecan pie. The dismissal stung worse than the exclusion. Those turnovers came from my father's mother's recipe, written on an index card now yellowed with age, one of the few things that survived the estate sale after Dad died. But Diane had already turned away, gravitating toward Rick's sister Patricia, leaving me stranded near the entrance like a delivery person who'd overstayed their welcome. Someone needs to document this. Rick's voice boomed across the barn. He stood near the makeshift bar no license displayed. I noticed holding court with his brothers. His face had that ruddy flush that came after his 3rd beer, the one that used to make me lock my bedroom door when I still lived at home. Where's my photographer? Heads swiveled. Patricia pointed. At me. She's got that fancy phone, Patricia said, her smile sharp as broken glass. The one she's always checking for work emails. Work. As if my job ensuring pharmaceutical compliance was something cute, a hobby compared to the serious business of overcharging for wedding venues and selling hard cider without proper permits. But I pulled out my phone because the alternative was standing there like a mannequin while they laughed. Through the camera lens, I cataloged their kingdom. Rick at the center, always, his arm possessively around Diane's waist, his son from his first marriage. Derek, pouring shots at the bar for a cluster of younger cousins including Logan Pike, who managed Rick's mobile bar service and whose laugh could strip paint. The wall behind them had been repainted last summer, covering the pencil marks where Diane used to measure my height on birthdays, before Rick convinced her that dwelling on the past was unhealthy. Tell them about the Singapore expansion, Rick commanded during the toast, his voice carrying that edge of challenge. He meant the story he'd been peddling about landing international distribution for the Orchard's cider, a complete fabrication. I'd checked the export licenses. None existed. Actually, I heard myself say, my voice steady as a held breath. The international shipping regulations for alcohol require. The crack of his palm against my hand sent my phone spinning across the floor. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the device's final skitter across polished concrete. My cheek burned where his wedding ring had caught the skin, and I tasted copper in my mouth. Logan's laugh erupted first, bright and cruel. "She's doomed," he announced to the room, raising his beer in mock salute. "Absolutely doomed." At 5:41 p.m., I knelt on the event barn floor, my navy dress soaking up dust and spilled beer, blood dripping from my cheek onto the concrete Rick had poured over the original hardwood, the same hardwood where my father had once taught me to dance before a different kind of accident took him away. 43 members of the Whitaker family stood watching, their matching shirts like uniforms in an army I'd never be allowed to join. Diane remained at Rick's side, her hands folded, her silence louder than Logan's laughter. I picked up my phone. Screen cracked but functional. The camera still worked. I took one last photo of their faces, arranged in perfect composition, a portrait of complicity. Then I left. The Walgreens bathroom mirror showed me what they'd done, a diagonal cut across my left cheekbone, already purpling at the edges. Blood caked in my hairline where I'd pushed strands back without thinking. My wrist throbbed, not broken, but sprained enough to make driving hurt. I cleaned the wound with paper towels and hand soap, each dab sending sparks through my jaw. I didn't call 911, not yet. Instead, I called Maeve Ortiz from the parking lot, my phone propped on the dashboard because my hand shook too much to hold it steady. Maeve answered on the second ring, her voice sharp with Saturday evening wine. "Elise, what's—" "I need you to listen carefully," I said, watching my reflection in the rearview mirror, cataloging evidence. At 5:41 p.m., Rick Whitaker struck me in the face at a family gathering. 43 witnesses. I need you to draft a temporary protection order. But first, I need to document everything. Maeve's voice shifted. Wine forgotten. Lawyer engaged. Hospital first. You need an official medical record. Do not shower. Do not change clothes. That dress has evidence on it, blood spatter patterns, dirt from where you fell. Emergency room at Riverside General. Ask for Dr. Sarah Hendricks if she's on shift. She's thorough with assault documentation. My laugh came out cracked. Assault at a family reunion. Assault in front of witnesses who did nothing to help. Maeve corrected. That's conspiracy after the fact if any of them lie about what they saw. Now drive carefully. I'll meet you there. But first, I had another stop. The Kleins lived directly across from the event barn, their 1960s ranch house commanding a perfect view of the parking area. Harold Klein answered the door in his Ohio State sweatshirt, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm when he saw my face. "Jesus Christ, Elise, what happened to you?" "Mr. Klein, I need to ask about your doorbell camera, the one that faces the street." His wife Ellen appeared behind him, gasped, disappeared, returned with a bag of frozen peas. "Harold installed that thing after the mailbox incidents last year. It catches everything: the barn, the parking lot, the road, sends alerts to our phones constantly. I need the footage from today, from about 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Harold was already pulling out his phone. That commotion at the barn. We heard shouting. Ellen wanted to call someone, but I said it was family business." He trailed off, understanding dawning. "It was you they were shouting at." The footage was crisp, HD quality. The angle caught the open barn doors, showed the crowd inside, the moment of impact clearly visible. Logan's laughter carried on the audio, distinct and damning. Harold sent me the file immediately, and I forwarded it to Maeve, then uploaded it to 3 different cloud services. "Your father would be sick about this," Ellen said quietly. "David was such a gentle man. He'd hate what they've done to his little girl." David Rowan, dead 8 years now. Construction accident that left behind a modest life insurance policy, a 1987 Ford F-150 and small shares in what was then just Whitaker Orchards, Assets that mysteriously vanished after Mom remarried for tax purposes, she'd said. To simplify things, at the hospital, Dr. Hendricks photographed every bruise with clinical precision. The X-ray showed no fracture in my wrist, but soft tissue damage that would take weeks to heal. She dictated her notes while I sat there in a paper gown, my navy dress sealed in an evidence bag. Contusion to the left zygomatic arch consistent with blunt force trauma. Defensive wounds on both palms suggesting attempted protection from fall. Strain to right wrist indicative of impact against hard surface. Each word was a bullet in the chamber. Maeve arrived with a change of clothes and a legal pad. I've already started the paperwork. TPO first, then we go after them civilly. But Elise... She paused, studying my swollen face. There might be more here. That doorbell footage shows the inside of the barn pretty clearly. I saw at least 2 kids behind that bar who looked about 16. And Logan Pike, isn't he the one with the mobile bar service? Silver Crate Mobile Mixology. I confirmed. Rick's nephew. Does all the Whitaker events. Without proper licenses, I'm betting. Maeve's smile was sharp. You work in compliance. You know how to find public records. I did. And sitting in that emergency room at 8:43 p. Ice pack pressed to my face. I opened my laptop and began my real work. The Ohio Public Records portal was beautiful in its transparency. Business licenses, liquor permits, tax filings, health department inspections, fire marshal reports, all public, all searchable, all waiting. By the time Dr. Hendricks discharged me at 10:15 p. I had 23 documents downloaded and a timeline that went back 3 years. Rick Whitaker had built an empire on violations. Logan Pike had been serving alcohol on an expired license. The event barn had failed its last fire inspection. And there, buried in a property transfer from 2 years ago, my father's truck, sold to a third party with a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. The letters were too neat, the E in Elise too flourished. Forgery, a felony in Ohio. They made a mistake, I told Maeve as she drove me home. They hit me in front of witnesses. No, Maeve corrected, pulling into my apartment complex. They made a mistake thinking you'd stay down. Sunday morning, I submitted my first Ohio Open Records Act request at 7:03 a.m., my swollen fingers typing carefully around the wrist brace. The Riverton County Clerk's automated system confirmed receipt immediately. Request all business licenses, permits, and violations for Witt's Orchard and Event Barn, 2021-2024. Estimated response time 5 business days. But I knew Martha Jennings worked Sundays and loved nothing more than exposing tax cheats. By noon, Martha had personally emailed me 47 documents. The Event Barn's liability insurance had lapsed 6 months ago. They'd been operating without coverage while hosting weddings with 300 guests. The fire marshal's report from last inspection noted 3 violations blocked emergency exits, missing extinguishers, and this was beautiful illegal storage of alcohol in areas not covered by their limited liquor license. I called Thomas Bell from my kitchen table, surrounded by printed violations like tarot cards spelling doom. Ms. Rowan. His voice was cigarette rough. 20 years of investigating insurance fraud evident in every syllable. Maeve said you need someone who knows how to follow money. I need someone who can prove they're washing cash through the business. That's a serious allegation. I have their bank deposit records from the public filings. 12 events last month, but only 6 appear in the tax declarations. The rest were cash only. No paper trail except... I pulled up Logan's Instagram. Social media posts from the mobile bar at every single event. Thomas's laugh was dry. Idiots always photograph their own crimes. Send me everything. I'll have preliminary findings by Thursday. The deeper I dug, the more rot I found. Logan Pike's Silver Crate Mobile Mixology was a masterpiece of violations. His responsible beverage service permit had expired 14 months ago. The mobile vendor license listed an address that turned out to be a vacant lot. Best of all, I found a citation from Columbus PD serving alcohol to minors at a Ohio State graduation party. The fine was paid, but no follow-up inspection was recorded. I submitted a FOIA request to the Ohio Department of Commerce's Division of Liquor Control, then another to the Department of Taxation, the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, the Department of Agriculture because someone had to be inspecting that cider they claimed was award-winning. Maeve texted, "Found the notary who stamped your father's truck transfer. She says she never saw you sign anything." My phone rang. "Mom." "Elise, this is ridiculous." Diane's voice pitched high with anxiety. "Rick is willing to apologize. We can handle this as a family." I put her on speaker and started recording. "Handle what, exactly?" "This misunderstanding." "You provoked him, talking about regulations at his celebration." "I stated a fact about international shipping law. He hit me." "You've always been too sensitive. Remember when you claimed Derek pushed you at the lake?" "You were 12. These things happen." "I needed 6 stitches." "We can offer you money to cover your medical bills." "Are you attempting to bribe me to not press charges?" The silence stretched. Then, "We're family, Elise." "No," I said quietly. "We're not. You made that clear with the family-only invitation addressed to Ms. E. Rowan." I hung up and added the recording to my evidence folder. Wednesday arrived with Thomas Bell's preliminary report. He'd traced 6 years of deposits through public records and found discrepancies totaling $300,000, cash deposits just under the $10,000 reporting requirement. Employees paid in cash to avoid overtime obligations. Logan's mobile bar operating as a contractor while clearly being an employee under IRS guidelines. "There's more," Thomas said over coffee at the diner. "That truck of your father's, I found the buyer. He's willing to testify he never met you, that Rick handled the whole sale. The forgery was federal if they'd used mail or wire services. I checked the documentation the title transfer had been mailed to the DMV. By Thursday, I had my war map spread across my dining room table. Criminal charges: assault Rick, forgery Rick, contributing to delinquency of minors, Logan, tax evasion, both, administrative violations, alcoholic beverage control expired licenses, improper storage, serving minors, state fire marshal blocked exits, safety violations, Department of Taxation unreported income, Bureau of Workers' Compensation unregistered employees, no coverage. Civil actions, assault and battery, conversion of property, dad's truck, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud. Maeve studied the map like a general planning invasion. You know what's perfect. They're hosting a fundraiser Saturday for the county commissioner's re-election campaign. I pulled up the Facebook event page. Hearts and Harvest Gala at Witt's Event Barn. 200 invited guests, local politicians, business owners, media. If we coordinate the agencies, Maeve said slowly, they could all arrive at once. Operation Apple Core, I said, thinking of the rotten center of the Whitaker empire. Thomas leaned back, smiled. I know a guy at ABC who's been trying to make a big bust, another at the fire marshal's office who loves shutting down unsafe venues, and that workers' comp investigator, she's been circling Whitaker for years, just waiting for evidence. They've been operating like this for years, I said, touching my still bruised cheek. Because no one ever stood up to them. Well, Maeve said, raising her coffee cup. Someone's standing now. I opened my laptop and began typing, Dear State Fire Marshal's Office, I wish to report an imminent safety hazard at an event scheduled for this Saturday. One by one, I filed the reports. Each agency would need to investigate. And if they all happened to arrive at noon on Saturday, right when the commissioner was scheduled to speak, that would be quite the coincidence. The law offices of Brennan, Kowalski, and Associates occupied the top floor of Riverton's only high-rise, their conference room windows overlooking the sprawl of farmland where Witt's orchard carved its kingdom. Rick had hired them Thursday afternoon, probably the moment he received his first notice from the ABC about the pending investigation. Their cease and desist letter arrived at my apartment at 8:17 a.m. Friday morning, hand-delivered by a courier who looked apologetic. I signed for it while still in my pajamas, bruise fading to yellow-green, wrist still wrapped. Your unfounded allegations constitute defamation per se, I read aloud to Maeve over the phone. Demands for immediate cessation of all contact with regulatory agencies, withdrawal of all complaints, and consideration of financial settlement to avoid costly litigation. Maeve's laugh was sharp. They're scared. Discovery would destroy them. Tell them no settlement unless it includes a full audit of the last 6 years. I have a better idea, I said, studying the letterhead. Let's see what else they're hiding. Rick's attorneys had made a crucial mistake. They'd filed their representation with the court, making it public record, which meant I could now search for every case they'd handled for the Whitakers. 3 lawsuits from former employees, all settled, all sealed. But the initial complaints were public, and they painted a pattern: wage theft, unsafe working conditions, sexual harassment by Derek against seasonal workers. Mom called 6 times. I didn't answer. But I did listen to the voicemail she left at 2:34 p.m. Elise, please. Rick's lawyer says you're trying to destroy us. The fundraiser tomorrow is important for his reputation. If you care about me at all, you'll stop this vendetta. We can work something out. Call me. I texted back. Ask Rick about Dad's truck. Ask him who signed my name. She read it immediately. The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, nothing. At 4:10 p.m., I drove to the Wren and Maple Diner, the place Mom used to take me for milkshakes after school. Before Rick, before everything changed. She was already there, in our old booth by the window, looking older than her 58 years. You look terrible, she said, eyes on my bruised face. Documented by medical professionals, I replied, sliding in across from her. I placed my phone on the table, recording app visible. You wanted to talk? Diane's fingers worried at her coffee cup. Rick is upset. The agencies are calling. The fire marshal wants to inspect before tomorrow's event. ABC is threatening the liquor license. Good. Elise, he's my husband. He's a criminal, and you know it. Her face crumpled slightly, then reformed into the mask she'd worn for 12 years. You don't understand what it's like, being alone, trying to run a business after your father. Dad left you everything, the house, the insurance, his shares in the orchard. You weren't alone. You had me. You were 20, starting college. I couldn't burden you. So you married Rick and let him steal Dad's assets. You let him hit me. That was an accident. I pulled out the printed screenshot from the doorbell camera, the moment of impact frozen in high definition. Accident. Diane stared at the photo. In it, her face was visible over Rick's shoulder, watching, doing nothing. I need him, she whispered. You need his money. The orchard would have failed without Rick's management. The orchard is failing with it. He's washing cash. Mom, committing tax fraud. Logan's serving minors. Did you know Derek settled 3 sexual harassment suits? Her hand trembled, coffee sloshed. How do you know that had public records? The same records the county commissioner is going to see when the news breaks tomorrow. You're doing this at the fundraiser. Her voice pitched toward panic. Elise, you can't. There will be media, politicians. Exactly. She stood abruptly, clutching her purse. I won't be part of this. You already are. You've been filing joint tax returns. If Rick goes down for tax evasion, you're equally liable. The blood drained from her face. You wouldn't. I offered you a chance to stand with me the night he hit me. You stood with him. I pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. Thomas Bell, forensic accountant. He'll be in touch about the discrepancies in the orchard's books. Your signature is on every deposit slip. Diane left without another word, but she took the card. At 6:45 p.m., I met Logan Pike in the parking lot of a shuttered Kroger. He arrived in the Silver Crate van, custom-wrapped with photos of cocktails that looked nothing like the watered-down drinks he actually served. This is harassment, he said, not getting out of the vehicle. I held up the folder. Citation for serving minors. Instagram posts showing you working events without proper permits. Screenshots of you bragging about cash tips you never reported. I pulled out the last document. And this sworn statement from Ashley Morrison that you served her 15-year-old daughter alcohol at the graduation party, then tried to get her alone in your van. Logan's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Here's my offer, I said. You provide a sworn statement about Rick's financial crimes, the forgery of my signature, and what really happens at these events. In exchange, I recommend probation instead of jail time for the minor serving charges. Rick will destroy me. Rick will be in federal prison for tax evasion. I set the folder on his hood. You have until 11:59 p.m. to decide. After that, I file everything with the Columbus PD and the FBI. At 9:44 p.m., Logan texted, "I'll do it." By 10:30 p.m., I had his sworn statement, notarized by a 24-hour service. Rick forced employees to work off the books. Derek skimmed cash from events. The truck sale was entirely Rick's doing. Logan had witnessed him practicing my signature. And the video Logan mentioned, there was security footage of Rick instructing staff to pour premium liquor into well bottles, charging top shelf prices for bottom shelf product. Fraud, on camera. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by evidence, watching the clock turn to 11:58 p.m. tomorrow at noon. While Rick played host to Riverton's elite, his empire would fall. I set my alarm and texted Maeve. All pieces in position. Operation Apple Core is go. Thomas Bell's evidence files spread across my coffee table like a deck of marked cards. At 9:15 a.m. Saturday morning, he sat across from me, methodically organizing the kill shots. Logan's event calendar is gold, he said, tapping the printouts. 38 events in the last 3 months. Only 11 appear in the official books. The rest. He pulled out Instagram screenshots. Cash only. Look at this one Logan bragging about making $2,000 in tips at the Riverside Country Club graduation. No 1099, no W-2. No tax filing. I studied the social media posts. Logan posing with stacks of 20s. Derek in the background counting cash into bank bags. Rick supervising, always present but never photographed directly with the money. There's more, Thomas continued. That security footage Logan mentioned, I got it. He opened his laptop, turned it toward me. Grainy but clear Rick in the barn's storage room, pouring Tito's vodka into a Ketel One bottle, timestamp 3 weeks ago. That's fraud, federal if they served it at any event involving interstate commerce. The wedding last month, I said, remembering. The couple was from Michigan. Wire fraud, interstate commerce, FBI jurisdiction. Thomas smiled grimly. Your stepfather is looking at 5 to 10. My phone buzzed. A text from Logan. Rick knows something's up. He's at the barn, screaming at everyone. Derek's destroying papers. Destroying evidence, Thomas noted, adding it to his list. Another felony. At 10:22 a.m., Harold Klein called. Elise, you need to see this. Rick's got a bonfire going behind the barn. Looks like he's burning boxes of something. I forwarded the information to Maeve, who was already at the courthouse filing emergency preservation orders. Judge Martinez signed them, she texted back. Any destruction of documents after 10:30 a.m. is contempt. At 11:05 a.m., I met Logan in a McDonald's parking lot. He looked haggard, unshaven, scared. I need protection, he said, sliding into my passenger seat. Rick threatened me this morning. Said if anything happens at the fundraiser, he'll know I talked. Did he threaten you in writing text voicemail? Logan pulled out his phone, played a voicemail from 6:43 a.m. Rick's voice, slurred with morning drinking. You little shit. I know you met with her. If you tank my business, I'll make sure you never work in this state again. Your mother won't even recognize you when I'm done. Witness intimidation, I said, forwarding the audio to Maeve. That's another felony. There's something else, Logan said, fidgeting. The minors working today's event, Derek hired them yesterday. Cash only. Told them to lie about their ages if anyone asks. One of them is 15. The Miller kid, his parents don't even know he's working. I felt sick. Name Brady Miller, sophomore at Riverton High. Derek promised him $200 cash to bartend. Get me Brady's number, now. By 11:25 a.m., I had Brady Miller's parents on a three-way call with Maeve. They were horrified. They'd thought their son was at soccer practice. "We'll handle this," Mr. Miller said, voice tight with rage, "and we'll be pressing charges." At 11:35 a.m., I parked across from the event barn. The Hearts and Harvest Gala was in full swing. Cars lined the overflow lot, the commissioner's Blacktown car, the mayor's Escalade, Rick's F-350 with its vanity plate, Orchard Boss. Through the barn's open doors, I could see the crowd Riverton's elite in cocktail attire, unaware they were attending the last party the Whitakers would ever host. Logan's van was parked by the service entrance. Through binoculars, I watched Brady Miller carrying cases of beer from the van to the barn, 15 years old, hauling alcohol for cash while Derek supervised. I took photos with my phone's zoom, clear shots of the minor handling alcohol, Derek handing him cash, Rick overseeing it all. 11:42 a.m. Thomas texted, "Fire marshal en route. ABC confirmed. Department of Labor sending 2 investigators. Workers' comp auditor is driving up from Columbus." 11:47 a.m. The Miller's Honda Civic pulled into the lot. Mr. Miller got out, his face set in fury. Mrs. Miller was already on her phone calling the police, from what I could hear across the lot. 11:51 a.m. Harold Klein sent a video. "Your mom just showed up. She's crying." I watched the footage. Diane, in her fundraiser dress navy, of course standing by her car, staring at the barn. She knew what was coming. 11:54 a.m. 3 pieces of paper in my hand. Logan's sworn statement about the forgery. The notary's affidavit that she never witnessed my signature. The original title transfer for Dad's truck with the forged signature circled in red. I walked to my car's trunk, pulled out the file box I'd assembled. Every document copied in triplicate. 1 set for the prosecutors, 1 for the media, 1 for the insurance companies who'd be very interested to know they'd been defrauded on claims. 11:57 a.m. A text from an unknown number. "Rick, whatever you're planning, we can make a deal. Name your price." I texted back, "You already named it. At 5:41 p.m. last Saturday." 11:59 a.m. Commissioner Reynolds's speech was starting. I could hear his voice echoing from the barn's sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for supporting." I looked at my phone. The seconds counted down. Midnight, no. Noon, exactly. 3 vehicles turned into the driveway simultaneously. The ABC enforcement van, the fire marshal's red pickup, an unmarked sedan I knew carried the labor investigators. The commissioner was still speaking, unaware that his re-election campaign was about to become evidence in a federal case. I picked up the box, straightened my navy dress the same style I'd worn last week, but clean, unbloodied, victorious, and started walking toward the barn. Behind me, more vehicles arrived. The Millers had called the sheriff. Thomas Bell followed in his Toyota, recording everything on his dashboard camera. At the barn's entrance, I stopped. Inside, 200 of Riverton's finest were about to witness the complete destruction of the Whitaker empire. Logan stood behind the bar, face pale, hands shaking as he saw the investigators approaching. Derek was still counting cash at a corner table. Unaware, Rick stood beside Commissioner Reynolds, his red face gleaming with sweat and pride, about to introduce the man who would unknowingly preside over his downfall. And there, by the dessert table where my grandmother's turnovers should have been, stood my mother, watching me with eyes that finally understood. The fire marshal reached the door first. His hand went to his citation book. It was time. Friday, 4:10 p.m. Maeve filed the civil complaint for forgery and conversion of property at the courthouse. The clerk, who knew my father, stamped it with particular force. David Rowan was a good man, she said. About time someone held those vultures accountable. 5:35 p.m. ABC enforcement confirmed they would arrive at noon, sharp Saturday. We've been waiting for something solid on Whitaker, Agent Carla Morrison said over the phone. Your documentation is exactly what we needed. Full inspection team. Body cameras activated. 7:02 p.m. Department of Labor fast-tracked the wage investigation after I sent them the photos of the cash envelopes Thomas had obtained. Each one marked with an employee's name, and hours worked 47 hours for Jenny Patterson, paid for 35, 62 hours for Marcus Webb, paid straight time, no overtime, federal violations, everyone. 9:44 p.m. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing what I would say. Not to Rick, he didn't deserve words, but to the cameras that would be there. The commissioner always brought local media to fundraisers. Channel 7 would be covering the event. Their investigative reporter, Sandra Liu, had won awards for exposing corruption. I'd sent her an anonymous tip at 9:15 p.m. Major bust at Witt's Event Barn, Saturday noon. Bring cameras. I set 3 alarms: 5 a.m., 5:15 a.m., 5:30 a.m. Then lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ghost of my father's hand on my shoulder. Stand straight, Elise, he used to say. Stand straight and tell the truth. Saturday, 5:32 a.m. Coffee, black, toast I couldn't eat. My phone already buzzing with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading through Riverton's network of inspectors and investigators. They smelled blood in the water. 7:45 a.m. Final review of the evidence box. Every document in chronological order. The forged signature blown up and highlighted. Logan's statement notarized and verified. The Miller boys' work schedule Derek had texted him screenshot, printed, authenticated. 9:17 a.m. Maeve called. Judge Martinez signed the asset preservation order. If they try to move money or property, it's contempt. Also, the FBI callback came through. They're interested in the interstate fraud angle. Won't make it today, but Monday they'll be at Rick's door. 10:33 a.m. I drove past the barn once. The Hearts and Harvest banner stretched across the entrance. Gold letters on navy background. Rick's truck was there. Derek's Camaro beside it. Through the doors. I could see them setting up. Logan's van had just arrived. He was unloading cases of liquor, all legal-looking bottles that I knew contained cheaper product inside. 11:02 a.m. Parked at the gas station across the highway. Perfect view of the barn entrance. I watched Rick glad-handing early arrivals. Commissioner Reynolds' town car pulled up at 11:18 a.m. The mayor arrived at 11:26 a.m. Channel 7's van at 11:33 a.m. Sandra Liu herself stepping out with her cameraman. 11:41 a.m. A text from Mom. Please don't do this. I didn't reply. She'd made her choice a week ago when she stood silent while my blood hit the floor. 11:48 a.m. The Millers arrived angry. I watched Mr. Miller stride toward the barn, his wife on the phone with someone their lawyer. Probably. They'd found their 15-year-old son serving alcohol at a political fundraiser. The lawsuit would be devastating. 11:52 a.m. 3 official vehicles staged at the intersection, waiting. I could see Agent Morrison checking her watch. The fire marshal's truck idled behind her. The labor investigator's sedan third in line. 11:56 a.m. My phone rang. Rick. Last chance. His voice was desperate now, the bravado cracking. Whatever you want. The truck title cleared. Money. The house. Name it. I want my father back, I said. I want 8 years of standing outside your family circle back. I want my mother to have chosen me instead of your money. Can you give me that silence? Then we're done. 11:58 a.m. Thomas Bell pulled up beside me. Yeah, you ready for this? I looked at the barn. at the perfect life Rick had built on lies and theft and the assumption that I would always stay down when pushed. I've been ready since 5:41 p.m. last Saturday. 11:59 a.m. The commissioner was at the podium, Rick beside him, proud in his navy blazer with the gold pocket square. Derek counting money at the bar while Brady Miller, 15 years old, poured vodka into glasses. Mom stood by the dessert table, her hands clutched together like she was praying. The second hand on my watch swept toward 12. 50 seconds. The fire marshal started his truck. 40 seconds. Agent Morrison activated her body camera. 30 seconds. Sandra Liu was interviewing someone, unaware she was about to witness the story of the year. 20 seconds. I opened my car door. 10 seconds. Started walking. 5 seconds. The convoy of official vehicles turned into the driveway. 3 seconds. Rick saw them coming, his face draining of color. 2 seconds. The commissioner stopped mid-sentence. 1 second. I reached the barn entrance. Noon. Agent Morrison stepped out of her van, badge visible, citation book in hand. The fire marshal was already photographing the blocked exit. The labor investigators had cornered Derek, who was still holding a cash envelope. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rick started to say, trying to manage the situation. But I was already past him, walking straight to Sandra Liu, handing her a copy of the evidence summary. "Every violation documented," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Tax fraud, wage theft, serving minors, forgery, all of it." The camera swung toward me. The red recording light blinked on. Rick lunged forward, but Agent Morrison stepped between us. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back. This is an active investigation." The fire marshal's voice boomed across the barn. "This event is shut down immediately. Multiple safety violations. Everyone needs to exit in an orderly fashion." Commissioner Reynolds was backing away, his aide already on the phone, distancing themselves from the disaster. And through it all, I stood in my navy dress clean, unbloodied, unbowed, watching the empire fall. 11:51 a.m. Saturday, Elise stood at the edge of the event barn's parking lot, watching the 3 official vehicles idle at the intersection. Through her phone screen, she could see Sandra Liu interviewing the mayor about rural economic development. The red recording light on Channel 7's camera caught the afternoon sun. Nobody knew they were about to document the collapse of Riverton's most prominent family business. Inside the barn, Commissioner Reynolds adjusted the microphone, his voice carrying across the decorated space. "Before we begin, I want to thank Rick Whitaker for hosting this incredible event." Elise's phone buzzed. A text from Logan. "Rick just told Brady to hide the cash box if anyone official shows up. Derek's moving the unregistered workers to the back storage room." She screenshotted the message, forwarded it to Agent Morrison, who was 3 cars behind her in the ABC van. 11:58 a.m. The commissioner was building to his campaign pitch. "Small businesses like Witt's Orchard are the backbone of Ohio." Thomas Bell's Toyota pulled alongside Elise's position. Through his window, he held up his phone, showing the recording app running. Every word being captured. 11:59 and 30 seconds Agent Morrison's van began moving. The fire marshal's truck followed. The labor investigator's sedan brought up the rear. "Together," the commissioner continued, unaware of the approaching convoy, "we build a future based on family values, hard work, and honest noon." The ABC van's lights flashed as it turned into the driveway. No sirens. Agent Morrison was professional like that, but the emergency lights were enough. Every head in the barn turned. Rick's face shifted from confused to alarmed to furious in the span of 3 seconds. He grabbed the microphone from the commissioner. "Folks, nothing to worry about. Probably just a routine." "Mr. Whitaker." Agent Morrison's voice cut through the space as she entered. Badge raised. "Agent Morrison, Ohio Alcoholic Beverage Control. We're conducting an inspection of this premises based on multiple violation reports." The fire marshal was already at the back exit, placing orange cones. "This door is blocked by equipment. That's violation 1301.7, 701 of the Ohio Fire Code. Sandra Lou's cameraman swung toward the action, the red light never wavering. Derek tried to slip toward the storage room, but labor investigator Patricia Hayes intercepted him. "Sir, I need you to stay where you are. Nobody leaves until we've documented everyone present." The commissioner's aide was pulling him toward the side door, but Liu's microphone found him. "Commissioner, were you aware of violations at this venue?" Elise walked through the main entrance, her evidence box balanced in her arms. She moved deliberately, letting every guest see her bruised face, her steady stride, her unwavering purpose. "That's her," someone whispered. "Rick's stepdaughter, the one who— Brady, Mrs. Miller's voice cracked across the barn. She'd spotted her 15-year-old son behind the bar, vodka bottle in hand. "What are you doing here?" The boy froze. Derek, who'd been inching away, was caught standing next to a minor holding alcohol. Agent Morrison's body camera captured it all. "Ma'am," Morrison addressed Mrs. Miller, "is this your son?" "He's 15, Mr. Miller said loudly, ensuring everyone heard. 15 years old, and they have him serving liquor." The crowd recoiled. Parents with teenagers started checking their phones, wondering if their kids had also been recruited. Rick tried damage control. "This is a misunderstanding. The boy is just helping with setup." "I have screenshots," Elise said, her voice clear and carrying. She pulled out the printed texts. "Derek's messages to Brady, promising $200 cash to bartend today." She handed copies to Agent Morrison and Sandra Lou simultaneously. The fire marshal's voice boomed from the back. "I count over 300 guests with only one unblocked exit. This venue is licensed for 200 maximum. Everyone needs to evacuate immediately." "This is harassment," Rick shouted, his face purple with rage. He pointed at Elise. "She's orchestrating this because you assaulted her last Saturday," Logan said suddenly, stepping away from the bar. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. "I saw it. We all saw it. You hit her for telling the truth about your fake Singapore expansion." The silence was deafening. Sandra Liu's microphone swung toward Logan. "You witnessed an assault." "We all did," Logan continued, momentum building. "And I'm done covering for you. Rick, the watered liquor, the tax evasion, the cash payments." He looked directly at the camera. "I have receipts. For all of it." Derek lunged at Logan, but Thomas Bell stepped between them, his phone raised, recording everything. "Assault on camera," he announced calmly. "That's helpful for the prosecution." Agent Morrison was writing citations faster than Elise had ever seen anyone write. "Serving alcohol to a minor, operating over capacity, improper storage of alcohol." She looked up at Rick. "Your license is suspended immediately pending review." "You can't," Rick started. "Sir, I also need to see your records for all alcohol purchases and sales for the last 12 months. Morrison's smile was sharp. "Unless you'd prefer we get a warrant and look for them ourselves?" The fire marshal had reached the bar area. "Is that a propane heater next to wooden crates of alcohol? That's criminal negligence. This whole building is shut down. Now!" Guests were fleeing, their cocktail attire rustling as they pushed toward the single exit. The commissioner was long gone. The mayor was backing away from Rick like he was radioactive. Diane stood frozen by the dessert table, watching her world collapse. Her eyes met Elise's across the chaos. "You did this," she said, but it wasn't an accusation. It was understanding. Finally. "No," Elise replied. "Rick did this. I just made sure everyone saw it." Patricia Hayes from the Department of Labor had Brady Miller's phone, scrolling through his messages. "Mr. Whitaker, these texts show you've been employing minors without work permits, paying cash to avoid taxes, and violating overtime laws." Behind her, 2 more investigators were interviewing the kitchen staff, all of whom seemed eager to discuss their cash envelopes and 60-hour weeks. Rick's lawyer, who'd been enjoying champagne 5 minutes ago, pushed through the crowd. "Don't say anything," he advised Rick urgently. "Not a word." But it was too late. Sandra Lou already had everything she needed, and her cameraman had captured Rick's admissions, Derek's assault on Logan, and the 15-year-old behind the bar. 12:09 p.m. The barn was evacuating under fire marshal supervision. Agent Morrison had sealed the alcohol storage with official tape. Patricia Hayes had boxes of employment records loaded into her vehicle. Rick stood in what had been his kingdom, watching strangers catalog his crimes. His navy blazer with its gold pocket square looked like a costume now, a pretense of respectability that had finally worn through. 12:23 p.m. The fire marshal's assistant finished wrapping the last strand of yellow tape across the barn's main entrance. The adhesive made a sharp ripping sound as it sealed Rick's dreams behind official warnings. Closed by order of fire marshal. Unsafe structure, do not enter. Agent Morrison stood at her van, methodically filing citations. Mr. Whitaker, your alcohol license is formally suspended. Any attempt to serve or sell alcohol on these premises will result in criminal charges. She handed him the stack of papers, each one a nail in his commercial coffin. You have 30 days to appeal. Rick didn't take them. His hands hung at his sides, his face the color of old concrete. The papers fell to the gravel, scattering in the October wind. Commissioner Reynolds's town car was already gone. His campaign signs mysteriously vanished from the property. The mayor had left so quickly she'd forgotten her purse her assistant would retrieve it Monday, after the news cycle had moved on. But Sandra Lou remained, her microphone finding witness after witness. Logan Pike, she said, approaching him as he signed his statement for the labor investigators. You mentioned falsified liquor. Can you elaborate? Logan looked at Rick, then at Elise, then directly into the camera. Every bottle of premium vodka served here was actually bottom-shelf product. I have video from 3 weeks ago showing Mr. Whitaker making the switches himself. The sound Rick made wasn't quite a word, wasn't quite a scream. It was the sound of a man watching everything he'd built with other people's money turn to ash. Derek tried to run. He made it 6 steps before Mr. Miller caught his arm. You hired my 15-year-old son to serve alcohol. Miller's voice was deadly quiet. My lawyer will be in touch. Patricia Hayes from the Department of Labor had set up an impromptu interview station by the old Apple Press Rick had installed for Atmosphere. One by one, employees lined up to report their real hours, their cash payments, their missing overtime. Jenny Patterson showed 6 months of handwritten logs. Marcus Webb had photos of every cash envelope, dated and documented. Conservative estimate, Hayes told her colleague, loud enough for the camera to catch. $300,000 in wage theft. That's before penalties. Diane still stood by the dessert table, her navy dress chosen to match Rick's celebration now looking like morning clothes. She held her phone, staring at something on the screen. Elise approached slowly, giving her mother space to run if she chose. But Diane stayed. Dad's truck, Diane said quietly, showing Elise the screen. It was the forged title transfer, downloaded from the DMV database. I knew. Part of me knew the signature was wrong, but I told myself you'd agreed, that Rick was handling it for everyone's benefit. He stole from a dead man, Elise said simply. From your husband. My father. I know. Diane's voice broke. I know that now. The ABC team had moved to the storage area, where they'd found cases of unlabeled bottles, liquor without tax stamps, and receipts that didn't match inventory. Each discovery brought new citations, new evidence for prosecutors. The fire marshal emerged from his final inspection, his face grim. Mrs. Rowan, he addressed Elise formally. The violations here are extensive enough that I'm recommending criminal charges for negligent endangerment. That blocked exit could have killed people. Rick heard that. His lawyer heard that. Sandra Lou's camera caught his face as the word criminal sank in. This is all her... Rick finally exploded, pointing at Elise. She planned this. She set me up because you assaulted her, Thomas Bell said calmly, holding up his phone. I have the video from the Klein's doorbell camera. Would you like everyone to see it? He pressed play. The barn's expensive sound system, still connected to his Bluetooth, broadcast the audio the crack of Rick's hand, Logan's laughter, the silence of 37 witnesses. The crowd that remained mostly journalists now, and investigators watched Rick Whitaker revealed for what he was. Not a successful businessman, not a pillar of the community, just a man who hit his stepdaughter for speaking truth, then thought money could make it disappear. At 12:32 p.m., a sheriff's deputy arrived, not for the assault that would come later, but for Brady Miller. "We need a formal statement about the minor being employed illegally," the deputy explained, but his eyes were on Derek, who was sweating through his shirt. The kitchen staff had gathered by the entrance, watching the kingdom fall. One of them, Maria, who'd worked every weekend for 2 years without overtime, began to clap. Slowly, steadily, others joined her. They weren't applauding the destruction. They were applauding Elise, who'd done what none of them could afford to do, stand up to Rick Whitaker and win. Sandra Liu found Elise by her car, where she was loading her evidence box into the trunk. "Ms. Rowan, any comment for our viewers?" Elise looked at the barn, its doors sealed, its business destroyed, its owner standing in the wreckage of his own greed. Then she looked directly into the camera. "My father used to say that the truth doesn't need elaborate decorations. It just needs someone willing to tell it." She touched her fading bruise. "At 5:41 p.m. last Saturday, Rick Whitaker thought he could silence me with violence. He was wrong." She pulled out the one document she hadn't given to anyone yet, the original deed to her father's shares in the orchard, the ones Rick had stolen through forgery. "This is mine," she said simply, "and I'm taking it back." The camera captured Rick's face as he realized what that meant. The orchard wasn't just his anymore. The woman he'd tried to erase from the family owned enough shares to demand an audit, to force a sale, to destroy him completely. Logan had signed his final statement. The Millers had their evidence. The investigators had their violations. Sandra Liu had her story. At 12:41 p.m., the last official vehicle pulled away from Witt's event barn, leaving behind yellow tape, suspended licenses, and the wreckage of Rick Whitaker's empire. Elise stood beside her car, watching the sealed doors of the barn. Her mother approached hesitantly, mascara streaking her cheeks. "What now?" Diane asked. "Now." Elise pulled out her phone, showed her mother the text from the FBI. "We'll be in contact Monday regarding the interstate fraud allegations." She looked at the barn one last time, the place where she'd been hit, humiliated, cast out of a family that was never really hers. "Now we let the law finish what Rick started." She drove away, leaving Rick standing in his empty parking lot, his navy blazer dusty, his gold pocket square crooked, his empire reduced to sealed doors and legal notices. The last sound was the fire marshal's tape, ripping in the wind. Thank you for listening to this story of justice served cold and calculated. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of revenge through paperwork resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Elise's position? Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's just making sure the right people see the truth at exactly the right moment.